really do have to see it to believe it. Everything was just dead and gone.
They had water coming in from everywhere. The wind was blowing at least 160.
You just want to go back home so bad and you can't. My mom finally called one night and said that everything was gone.
In the course of 24 hours, our lives changed dramatically.
And we thought that our house was going to be like a fishbowl that was just going to fill up, and there was no way that it could get out.
It can happen to anyone. It's a reality.
Prior to Hurricane Katrina, we were a school system of 14 schools, elementary, middle, and high, and a preschool center. So a total of 15 school sites where we served 8,800 students.
On the Friday before Katrina, Chalmette High sponsored its 43rd football jamboree. It was a very busy day getting ready for the first ball game of the year.
We were all sitting in our stadium, which we love, and we knew that there was a hurricane in the Gulf, but it had not put us in its crosshairs yet, so we just assumed it was going to go to Florida, like the forecasters had predicted.
As it approached Saturday, I had all of our principals come in, check their buildings, make sure everything was locked down, had our maintenance crew come in. Our IT person backed up our student database, our financial database, and as usual, we gathered all of the food that we had in every one of our cafeterias and brought them and centralized them here at Chalmette High School.
We put a few food and water supplies upstairs. As the people came in, they were representative of the past shelter evacuees. Married couples, extended families with children, older people with no families, people who had relatives but were left behind, the sick and the disabled, people who had no means or no transportation to go anywhere else.
So the storm raged Sunday night. We stood there and watched the roof of the elementary school across the street being blown off. The electricity went out, of course, and we had a generator that we thought we could start, and in the midst of the storm, several of the men went out, tried to get it started, and couldn't. So it didn't work. So we had no electricity as the storm raged all Sunday night and into early Monday morning. The windows burst in the school, some of the rain came in, but we rode that out pretty well.
Mid-morning, the firemen received a report that water was rising in Araby, the community adjacent to Chalmette.
We had evacuees, some of whom were very infirm, on the first floor here. So our main priority at that point was to get the evacuees upstairs and make them safe. We had to get the people safe.
So as we were doing that and looked up, down the main thoroughfare that the school sits on, there was a wall of water just coming down the thoroughfare.
The water appeared on the outside of the school windows, coming up a foot or two. And then all of a sudden, the water was 5.5 feet high inside the school. It came within 15 minutes. It was a mixture of marsh-bottom mud, oil and gasoline, fish and grass. It came with a strong current and invaded every ground floor room.
And you could see it come in across the football field, and I was watching it over the infield and the end zones, and then it came in over the 10-yard line, the 20-yard line, then it was the 50-yard line. And then we began, you could tell the depth of it because it began to rise toward the first level of our stadium, which is an elevated stadium, and you realize the depth of it, and the breadth of it was just incredible, and the speed of it.
We sat here, I guess, that Monday afternoon as the water rose to the rooftops of one-story buildings. We began to hear people cry for help because they were trapped. We were on the second floor now of the school, completely surrounded by water. So if you looked out, all you could see was a lake. We were under about 8 feet of water. The boats then began to rescue people, and these were not boats sent in by a state or federal government. These were boats manned by the people who lived in St. Bernard Parish. And as they rescued our people, they were bringing them to us.
The boats docked at the end of walkways. The people walked on top of the walkway coverings to the windows in our stairwell. We still have a yellow chair where the people climbed in the windows.
So by Monday evening, our numbers swelled to almost 1,500 people.
There was little communication. Cell phones worked only late at night if we went up to the roof, and then only for seconds. In a world where video phones show TV pictures from Afghanistan, we couldn't talk to our government leaders a mile away.
It looked pretty bleak at times, and we kept, I guess at that point we didn't realize the massiveness of the event. Because we had no communication whatsoever, we didn't realize that not only were we underwater, but major portions of New Orleans was as well. And we didn't realize, and we couldn't understand why no one was coming to help us.
2 men came in who needed dialysis. One, Tom, had a special peritoneal type of dialysis that he needed. He came in wet and he shivered even though the late August temperature was stifling. He needed treatment. Each day he would tell us the number of days he had left. I hope he made it. Many others needed oxygen. One gentleman told us that he had 24 hours of oxygen left, then came back and told us that he had made a mistake. He only had 2 hours remaining. There we were in the middle of an 8-foot toxic lake in a totally devastated community, needing oxygen tanks to save lives.
One of our state senators, Walter Vaso, came up in a boat to our second floor building and asked our superintendent, Ms. Boche, what we needed. We needed oxygen tanks, we needed more gasoline to run the generators, and we needed food and water. We had no idea how long we would be here without food and water.
As people kept arriving at our school, they were bringing whatever possessions they could take with them in a boat, and they were bringing them their animals as well. So in this shelter, or in the school, we had dogs, cats, birds, people who had no dry clothes, and no bathroom facilities that worked.
We worked very hard to get the infirm people out as soon as we could, and then that Wednesday we were finally, the water had gone down enough in one part of the campus where we could get the people out toward our stadium and walking toward what we call St. Bernard Highway, which is drier, get them out. They were able to walk to the ferry.
About 5 days later, the first people who set foot in our community were a Canadian Search and Rescue Unit, and they came to us before anyone from our state or federal government arrived.
My school group of 23 people had another problem. We had 23 pets with us. Because we knew that the authorities would not let us leave with our pets, we had arranged to leave on a tugboat. The river was only half a mile away. Everything was in place when the Coast Guard stopped our boat captain from coming to our rescue. We had to do some quick rearranging. On Friday at 11 a.m., we left the school on a hot wired and changed battery school bus and van. And after much haggling about the animals, we weren't going to leave without our animals. We got on 3 different boats, another school bus, and several pickup trucks. We were taken through New Orleans on the expressway. We saw the out-of-control gas fires shooting up in the air. We passed people walking in the opposite direction, going nowhere. Even though we were told at various times that we were going to Bayou Lacombe, Bayou Loutre, Madison, Mississippi, Dallas, and other places, we finished our exodus in Gonzales 13 hours later, thanks to a church group and the Louisiana Department of Wildlife and Fisheries.
Used to have like a little stuffed teddy bear to sleep with. I forgot it. I saw it in the middle of my room with the bear ripped head into pieces.
My house didn't fare too well. It wound up in my neighbor's yard. And 3 houses that don't belong to us belonged on my lot now, along with the car. So. We did have water. We lost everything we had. We had 8 feet of water in our house.
I couldn't stay in the house for long. I had to come out because I just started crying my eyes out, just actually witnessing that everything was gone and knowing that you can never go back to your house again.
What I miss most would have to be my old school, actually. I was a senior there, proudest year, had my own senior staircase, everything else. And I was there for 2 weeks and it was gone.
This place is gone. And we had to go through that initial shock of almost a sense of hopelessness and despair, to kind of standing up, dusting ourselves off, and saying, no, okay, we have 2 choices. We either let St. Bernard die, or we become part of bringing it back. And we chose to be part of bringing it back. And I made the pledge to the people in this community that the first child who arrived back, I would provide educational services.
A month after the storm, I was called to Baton Rouge to get back to work. Our superintendent, Doris Voce, was trying to get through the FEMA maze. At first, she was told that we could get 2 modular schools built by the Corps of Engineers by January 15th. After 2 weeks of planning, the story changed. And so there became a big FEMA turf war over who really came to our rescue. And what resulted is practically nobody was coming to our rescue. And we went through, I think, 8 or 10 or 15, I've forgotten at this point, FEMA project directors. That's the person who comes in and sits with you and makes all your hopes and dreams come true. And they were changing on us weekly. And we would say, well, FEMA Bob told us this, and oh, that's not correct, because FEMA Jim would say something different. And then we would say, well, FEMA Jim said, and FEMA Tim would say, oh no, that's not correct. And so every week or every 2 weeks or so, as our FEMA project directors changed, the stories changed, the guidelines changed. So we looked at them and said, thank you very much, but we'll do it ourselves. She took it upon herself to go out and contract with a private company without any money coming in, to build a trailer school and attach it to the second floor of Chalmette High School.
And it's really strange that we could find portable buildings in North Carolina and Georgia that were immediately available, and nobody else could seem to do that.
And in 3.5 weeks, we set up 18 classrooms in the parking lot of Chalmette High School. They were pioneers in that they were here to help us rebuild the school system and thus rebuild our community. And that they had weathered this storm. It would make them stronger and us stronger. And no one was putting us out of St. Bernard Parish, and we would rebuild.
It's an interesting, kind of exhilarating experience in a way, because we're putting together what we're putting together and we're trying to rise from something from the ashes here.
I guess it was kind of a joke for a while that we could get a school system up and running in less time than it takes our federal government to open a post office. We knew that we had to provide some form of breakfast and some form of lunch because all of our children now, the majority of them would be living in either trailers or in tents on concrete slabs. And the FEMA people told me, well, you know, why don't you just feed them sandwiches or the MREs, those meals ready to eat, which we all ate a lot of at that time. And I said, no. I said, I'm going to feed them a hot meal, and we'll feed them a hot meal from the very first day because that's probably going to be the only hot meal that they'll get all day. This young boy, I guess about 8 or 9 years old, walked into the tent and saw the food, and he opened it and he said, oh my God, real food. So that child, that was the first time he had had what he thought of as real food since the hurricane. We knew we had to refurbish one of our schools, so I got a contractor who was skilled in doing quick turnarounds. They'd done a lot of work in the Carolinas after Hurricane Hugo. We contracted with them, and I gave them a deadline. They began the first week in December, and I gave them a deadline of January 18th to have a new roof on this school building, a working cafeteria, and the use of all of the classrooms in the main building. And they came through with it. And as the community grows, we've got to keep a step ahead of them in making sure that the educational facilities are going to be ready for them.
The outpouring of support and the donations that have come in to the school system have been unbelievable.
At Christmas, the people of South Florida donated 660 bicycles, one for each student enrolled. The Miro Foundation gave every student either a $300 iPod or a portable DVD player, depending on the age of the child.
It's just been heartening that people are so willing to help us in terms of money, in terms of manpower, and in terms of supplies, all going to help the kids.
The community of Central Louisiana donated its profits from this year's fair, $190,000.
And we have made some lifelong friends, and we have made the commitment that 2 years from now, when they do their next fundraiser to help a community in need, we're going to be there helping them raise money. Bought buses, school buses, with their donation. And pretty soon you'll be seeing buses on the street that have on the side of them donated by the spirit of the city of Central.
They often leave saying that we'll be back, and some have come back to help us. Some have come from as far away as Oregon, you know, the Latin school in Chicago, they have come down. We've had people from the University of Michigan. You know, it's been extremely rewarding. People from New York have been down to see us and have tried to help us. Boston, you know, in many, many ways, want to be here to be part of a hands-on bringing back this community and this school. Our First Lady has been to visit us twice, along with Margaret Spellings, and we've had our local senator, you know, Mary Landrieu, has come down and brought some very important congressmen down to see, and some senators to see what's happened to us. They really don't believe it until they get here as to the dimension of the disaster, of the devastation. On TV, you just get a one-dimensional look at it, so to speak. But when you walk in it, when you smell it, when you experience it and the wind is blowing and the dust is blowing around, and you can really appreciate the level of the devastation and how it has so impacted every house, every street, every church, every business, everything here has been impacted by that storm.
The schools are back, and they've been back, and the leadership is phenomenal.
I think the highlight of this year for everybody was the graduation ceremony at the New Orleans Arena.
And each school was able to recognize its honor graduates, recognize its award winners in some way, shape, or form, so they were able to represent their school, that even though they had not been there in that building for the year, they were still there together in spirit. And it was a wonderful, wonderful ceremony for all the kids to be together and appreciate what each school had brought to the district during its tenure as a school in our parish. It was a wonderful, wonderful ceremony for the kids.
You can see in them that they have learned to value relationships and time spent together, which pre-Katrina probably would not have been an issue for them because they were always immediately there. These kids have grown up. They have definitely grown up. We did it. We did it on our own. Just do not think for a second that we did not do it on our own. The people who are the employees of the St. Bernard Parish Public Schools made this happen.
Everybody was saying that too, like, why do we want to go back? But it's home. It's like, you grew up here. Everything you knew was here.
And I think the tribute to the people in this parish, they want to come home.